I stood in a room I paid for and watched my own daughter deny I existed. She pointed at a silver-haired gentleman in a perfect tux and called him Dad, while I sat at table 21 beside the service door, the guy they hoped no one would recognize. The band swelled, the crowd cheered, and somewhere between the champagne and the speeches, they forgot one detail: the $350,000 final authorization that keeps this party alive runs through my phone, because every contract here carries my name. If you've ever been invisible at a celebration you made possible, hit subscribe and tap the bell. Tell me where you're watching from in the comments. I read them. Because before the night is over, the screens in this ballroom will show a message no one here expects, and my daughter will learn something money can't buy: you don't get to erase family and keep the funding. When people looked at me that night, they saw a man who didn't belong in a ballroom. What they couldn't see were the 32 years that built that room, brick by brick, invoice by invoice. My name's Jack Rourke, founder of Rourke Mechanical and Property Services, a company that started with one rust red pickup, one toolbox, and an overdraft notice I kept taped above my desk as motivation. I wasn't born into Newport money. I was born in a garage behind my dad's old bungalow in Pawtucket, where winters froze the pipes and summers baked the roof tar. At 22 I quit a dead-end maintenance job, bought a second-hand van for $4,200, and started fixing boilers nobody else wanted to touch. The first 5 years were brutal: 16-hour days, 7 days a week, peanut butter sandwiches for lunch, a cot in the shop for sleep. But word travels fast when you show up, do good work, and don't gouge people. One customer turned into 3, 3 into 10. By the time my daughter Olivia hit kindergarten, I had a crew of 5 and a reputation solid enough to land municipal contracts. That little girl grew up on job sites, hard hat too big for her head, sketching stick-figure houses on my work orders. When her mother passed, it was just the two of us. I promised she'd never feel like she came from less. Every scraped knee, every birthday candle, every science fair volcano. I was there, sometimes covered in drywall dust, but there. When she wanted dance lessons, I paid for them. When her grades dipped in middle school, I transferred her to Harborview Academy. $15, $200 a year I didn't have but somehow found. She thrived, made honor roll, talked about art, fashion, and better neighborhoods. I didn't care about better. I cared about giving her choices I never had. So when Rhode Island School of Design accepted her, I mortgaged the shop's second property and wrote tuition checks that could have bought me a boat. That's how it goes for fathers like me. You work with your hands so your kid can hold a pen instead of a wrench. But somewhere along the way, Olivia learned to be ashamed of the wrench. After college, she interned at a gallery in Providence, then met Bennett Aldridge, whose family owned half the commercial real estate on Bellevue Avenue. Overnight, she had a new vocabulary: galas, regattas, trust meetings. I didn't fit that lexicon, and she stopped inviting me to things. "Dad, they wouldn't understand your kind of work," she'd say, smiling like she was protecting me. When she got engaged, I wanted to prove that my kind of work could fund any dream she had. I offered to pay for the wedding, not as a blank check, but as a business arrangement handled through Rourke Mechanical's corporate account. My accountant set it up so every vendor contract went through the company for tax deductions. My name, Jack Rourke, sat on every dotted line. At first, Olivia was grateful. Then came the details: the Bellevue Grand Hotel ballroom rental, $179, $500, catering by Harbor and Hearth, $112,000, florals, $31, $500, lighting and AV, $27,000. Even the custom monogram projection cost more than my first truck. Each quote arrived with that same note at the bottom: final authorization required by 9 p.m. day of event. I'd set it up that way deliberately. A simple digital token on my phone would release the last $350,000. It was my quiet insurance policy, a way to ensure everything went smoothly and everyone got paid. 6 months of planning followed: contracts, permits, endless emails. The planners treated me like an ATM with work boots. I didn't mind, I'd been ignored before. But when Olivia started introducing me to vendors as a family friend who's helping out, I felt something crack. It wasn't pride, it was recognition. She wasn't protecting me, she was erasing me. Still, I kept paying. The business was doing fine. 22 employees, $9.1 million in revenue, steady government work. I could afford her fairy tale. What I couldn't afford was what it cost me inside. 2 weeks before the wedding, the first real warning came. The planner, Sienna Park, copied me on an email chain discussing guest optics. One line stuck out. Bride prefers to keep her family background private during introductions. I stared at the phrase, family background private, and felt a cold weight settle in my chest. That's when I decided to wear a tux instead of my usual navy suit. Not to impress them, but to remind myself I belonged anywhere my money and integrity had built. On the morning of June 22nd, I reviewed the vendor dashboard one last time. Every invoice was cleared except the final authorization. A green button on my phone read, "Release payment, $350,000. Beneath it, in smaller text, Client of Record, Rourke Mechanical and Property Services, Owner, Jack Rourke." I didn't know then how important that line would become. At 3 p.m., my foreman texted, "Boss, you sure you don't want me there? We can deliver equipment for the AV." I told him to enjoy his weekend. "It's family time," I said. I didn't have the heart to add that family didn't quite mean what it used to. Driving down Ocean Drive, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror, hair silvering, hands still rough despite the cufflinks. I smiled, thinking Olivia would finally see that success doesn't always wear designer. I imagined her face when she realized the ballroom glittered because of her old man. That hope lasted exactly 40 minutes, right up until the moment I stepped into the Bellevue Grand's marble foyer and heard the maitre d' tell another guest. "Yes, the bride's father, Mr. Harrison Cole, has already arrived." My name wasn't on their lips, but my money was in their walls. And that's when I understood what was really at stake tonight. It wasn't $350,000. It was 30 years of identity, of being the man who built everything quietly while others took the credit. Tonight would decide whether I stayed silent again or reminded them what respect actually costs. By the time I pulled my 2018 Ram 1500 into the Bellevue Grand's circular driveway, the valet line looked like a car show for people who never lifted a hood. Rolls-Royces, Bentleys, Teslas gleamed under the early evening sun. My truck, clean but scuffed from a week of hauling copper piping, looked like a farmhand in a tuxedo. The valet gave me a polite half-smile, the kind that said thank you for showing up, please don't stay long. Inside, the Bellevue ballroom was every bit the spectacle Olivia had promised. Gold-leaf columns, a wall of glass facing the Atlantic, and chandeliers that could blind a man if he looked up too long. The air smelled like peonies and imported champagne. A live jazz trio played near the grand staircase. And just beyond the marble floor stood table 21, my name printed neatly on a card, next to the service door. It wasn't a coincidence. "Mr. Rourke?" came a crisp voice. A young woman with a headset and clipboard appeared, Sienna Park, the planner. She smiled efficiently, the kind of smile reserved for vendors and maintenance staff. "We've placed you right over here, perfect view of the dance floor. Perfect view of the catering corridor, more like." But I nodded. "Appreciate it." She didn't notice the irony. As I settled into my seat, I scanned the crowd. The Aldridge family occupied the front tables, a sea of tailored tuxedos and diamond earrings. Charles Aldridge Sr., the patriarch, held court near the head table, laughing too loudly. His wife Eleanor floated beside him like porcelain, greeting guests who whispered compliments about the exclusive guest list. At the center of it all was Olivia, radiant in her ivory gown, surrounded by photographers. She saw me. Our eyes met for half a second. Then she turned away, whispering something to a tall man I didn't recognize, Harrison Cole, the father, apparently. He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, as if he had the right. My stomach tightened. I took a sip of water and pretended to study the centerpiece, a bouquet of white lilies so large it could hide a small child. The table beside mine filled with distant relatives, the kind who only appear for milestone events. They nodded politely but didn't engage. I could feel the separation physically, like the air itself had different value per cubic foot depending on where you sat. "Mr. Rourke?" came another voice, this time Lauren Keating, the venue manager. Older, composed, eyes sharp. "Lovely to finally meet you in person. I just wanted to confirm, everything's running smoothly. And of course, the payment portal is still scheduled for 9 o'clock, yes?" She said it quietly, professionally. I saw the recognition in her eyes. She knew exactly who the real client was. "Correct," I said, glancing at my phone. The Rourke mechanical portal displayed a countdown timer. Final authorization due in 4 hours 32 minutes. "Excellent." Lauren smiled faintly. "If you need anything, just flag me. And Mr. Rourke, thank you for your business." Those words carried weight. She didn't say thank you for coming. She said thank you for your business. She knew where the signatures lived. As she walked off, a man 2 tables over leaned toward his wife and whispered, "That's the maintenance guy, isn't it? The one who handles the docks. Thought he wasn't coming." The wife replied softly. I looked at my water glass and smiled to myself. Word travels faster than champagne. Half an hour later, the jazz gave way to classical strings. Guests took their seats. A staffer dimmed the chandeliers slightly, leaving warm pools of light over the head table. Olivia stood to greet guests, her smile perfect, rehearsed. When someone asked where her father was, she gestured elegantly toward Harrison Cole, who gave a modest wave. The crowd applauded. That was the first spark. A few people at nearby tables frowned, glancing around. One woman, Margaret Lee, caught my eye. I'd repaired her furnace 2 winters ago. Recognition flickered in her face, followed by confusion. She mouthed silently, "I thought you were her dad." I gave a small shrug and looked away. My phone buzzed. A notification from Harbor and Hearth Catering. Reminder: final balance $112,000 pending client authorization by 9 p.m. Another message popped up seconds later from Merriweather Florals. Balance confirmation needed before bouquet delivery extension. They weren't urgent yet, but the system was awake, waiting. Across the room, Sienna adjusted the bride's train, whispering instructions. Charles Aldrich Sr. laughed at some joke from a senator. The mood looked effortless from the outside, but I could feel the tension building underneath. The staff was attentive, too attentive. They knew who signed their checks. At table 21, waiters passed with trays of champagne, avoiding my table with practiced oblivion. One young server, maybe 20, hesitated. He gave me a sympathetic nod before offering a glass. "You built all this, huh?" he murmured under his breath. I smiled. "Something like that." "Respect," he said quietly, and moved on. Every so often, my gaze drifted back to Olivia. She looked beautiful, yes, but it was the kind of beauty that cost a fortune in denial. Every smile was a performance, every gesture a calculation. The more I watched, the more I saw it. The nervous flick of her eyes toward the reporters, the careful way she avoided looking in my direction. At 7 o'clock, Lauren made another pass through the room, whispering updates into her headset. I saw her glance at her watch, then toward me, confirming the timeline. She didn't need to say it. We both knew that at 9 p.m., one button could turn the entire night on its head. By 7:15, the hum of conversation had changed. People weren't just celebrating, they were comparing. Who knew the Aldridges? Who had been to their estate? Who'd be invited next summer? I sat quietly, listening, invisible. That's the thing about invisibility, it gives you perspective. Every chandelier, every flower, every string note had a price tag attached. And I could see the invisible line connecting each of them back to me. When Tessa Quinlan, the journalist from the New England Society Ledger, walked in with her photographer, I knew the stage was set. She spotted me briefly, puzzled, then followed the light toward the head table where the father stood waiting for introductions. That's when I realized this wasn't just a wedding. It was a performance for people who'd never built a stage in their life. and I was the only one in the room holding the switch that could turn off the lights. At precisely 8:30, the house lights dimmed a shade and the string quartet eased into the opening bars of Canon in D. Conversation softened. Waitstaff glided between tables topping off champagne flutes, and the MC announced, "If everyone could please take their seats for the family toasts." The Aldridge table glittered beneath a halo of crystal light. Every camera and phone in the room tilted that direction. I watched from table 21, half in shadow near the service door, where the clatter of plates from the kitchen bled through the music. Charles Aldrich Sr. rose first. Perfect tuxedo. Pocket square folded like a surgeon's instrument. He tapped his glass with a practiced flourish. "Friends, family, and distinguished guests," he began, his voice smooth as aged Scotch. "Tonight we celebrate not only Bennett and Olivia, but the joining of two families whose values, integrity, grace, and good breeding, run deep." The crowd responded with the murmured approval of people confirming their own importance. I sat very still. When a man like that says, "good breeding," he's not talking about horses. Charles turned toward the head table. "And we must acknowledge the gentleman who shaped Olivia into the remarkable woman she is. Harrison Cole." Every head pivoted. Harrison stood, silver-haired, elegant, an actor playing the role of patriarch. He lifted his glass modestly while Olivia dabbed at the corner of her eye. "My father," she said softly, for the microphone to catch. "The man who taught me everything about loyalty and class." The ballroom erupted in applause. Glasses raised. Flashbulbs fired. For a second I heard the surf crashing outside and thought maybe that sound was in my ears. My hands rested on the tablecloth, callous fingers against imported linen. The applause went on and on. Across the room Lauren Keating, the venue manager, stood at the periphery, face neutral but eyes sharp. She knew the truth behind every contract number. Our gazes met briefly. Hers said, "Are you going to let this continue?" I wasn't sure yet. Charles Aldrich Sr. wasn't finished. "Harrison, you've clearly done something right. Olivia carries herself with such refinement, such dignity. You remind us all what true fatherhood looks like." He raised his glass toward Harrison. "To the man who gave us this extraordinary woman." A cheer rippled through the crowd, polite, oblivious, cruel. A hand touched my arm. Margaret Lee, the woman whose furnace I'd repaired, leaned from her table. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Jack, what on earth are they talking about?" I thought. "You were right," I murmured. "You just weren't supposed to say it out loud." Her eyes widened as she realized. The people around her began murmuring too, ripples moving outward through the tables like a dropped stone in still water. Tessa Quinlan, the reporter, lifted her phone, sensing story. The photographer at her side framed shots of Harrison smiling beside Olivia. She didn't know yet that the real headline sat 20 feet away, forgotten at table 21. The toast continued. Charles waxed on about heritage and legacy. Olivia nodded demurely, face glowing in the light of $500,000 worth of chandeliers. Every phrase was another shovel of dirt over the life I'd lived for her. By the time he concluded, "To new beginnings built on proud foundations," I felt something settle inside me. Not anger. Clarity. You don't spend 30 years solving problems without recognizing when the fix is yours to make. Polite applause faded. The quartet shifted to a soft waltz. Guests rose for another round of congratulations. I watched Harrison Cole lean down, kiss Olivia on the forehead, whisper something that made her laugh. Cameras flashed again. Then I saw Lauren glance at her watch. 8:45 p.m. 15 minutes until the final authorization expired. The vendors were waiting. The system was waiting. And so was I. My phone buzzed on cue. Coastal Harbor Bank Portal. Final authorization required by 9 p.m. for transaction number 88422, $350,000. I placed the phone face down. A young server approached with a tray of champagne. His hands trembled slightly. "Mr. Rourke, sir," he whispered. "Ms. Keating asked if you needed anything before the toast segment ends." I looked up at him. Just make sure everyone gets what they ordered. He nodded, uncertain, and hurried off. At the head table, Bennett Aldrich was speaking now, quick, charming, practiced. He thanked his parents for their guidance, his friends for their loyalty, and his father-in-law Harrison for entrusting him with Olivia's heart. That line earned laughter and a few sentimental sighs. Olivia reached for Harrison's hand again. They looked perfect, Instagram perfect. Invisibility has its own kind of pressure. You start to feel the walls bend around it, the air grow heavy. I wasn't angry anymore. I was simply done pretending I wasn't there. When Bennett finished, the MC announced dinner service would begin shortly. Forks clinked, chatter returned, music swelled. I rose from my chair. The motion was quiet, but people near me noticed. Margaret Lee's eyes widened. Dr. Walsh, another old client, put down his napkin. Even from across the room, Tessa Quinlan saw the shift in energy and lifted her phone to record. I straightened my jacket, buttoned it, and walked the length of the ballroom toward the stage. It wasn't far, maybe 40 steps, but each one sounded louder than it should have against the marble floor. Conversations dimmed as heads turned. By the time I reached the microphone stand, the room had fallen into a tentative hush. The quartet trailed off mid-phrase. Charles Aldrich Sr. frowned slightly, unsure whether to intervene. Olivia's smile froze in place. I looked out over the sea of faces, faces that had judged my calloused hands, the truck I drove, the seat I'd been given, and said calm and clear, "Before we continue, there's someone else who deserves a quick thank you." Every camera pivoted. Tessa's phone light blinked on. I gestured toward the chandeliers, the flowers, the gilded room around us. "Everything you see tonight, the venue, the catering, the lights, it all exists because one name appears on every contract. Mine!" Gasps, whispers. Harrison Cole's smile vanished. Olivia's complexion drained of color. Charles Aldrich Sr. stiffened, half rising from his chair. "My name is Jack Rourke," I said, steady as a level line. "And I'm Olivia's father." The silence that followed felt electric, fragile, humming, impossible to break. Someone in the back muttered, "He's the one who paid for everything." Cameras flashed again, brighter this time. I could see the panic ignite behind Olivia's eyes, the calculation of a person who realizes the story she's told has just collided with the truth. At the edge of the room, Lauren Keating lifted her radio slowly. "Ready. 8:55 p.m. 5 minutes to go." I smiled slightly. "Since we're giving toasts," I continued, "maybe we should toast honesty." And somewhere between the chandeliers and the trembling quiet of 350 guests, I knew the night had just shifted from performance to reckoning. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The chandeliers hummed faintly, the quartet's last chord still vibrating in the air. Then a waiter coughed, and the spell broke. Charles Aldrich Sr. forced a tight smile, the kind a man wears when he's about to fire someone politely. "Mr. Rourke, I'm not sure this is the time or place." I met his eyes. "It's exactly the time. Because the truth never gets better with delay." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Tessa Quinlan angled closer with her phone. The blue recording light reflected off her glasses like a beacon. "I spent 6 months financing this evening," I said, holding my voice steady, conversational. "Every vendor, every deposit, every guarantee signed under Rourke Mechanical and Property Services. Some of you might have worked with us, boiler replacements, emergency HVAC repairs, city contracts." A few heads nodded. Familiar faces remembered. "See, the Aldrich family wanted a fairy tale. And I wanted my daughter to have it. So we drew up contracts, legal, binding ones. All under my business account. All of them, venue, catering, florals, lighting, required a final authorization tonight at 9 p.m. I lifted my phone. The glowing screen displayed a portal login with the Rourke Mechanical logo. The countdown read 4 minutes and 32 seconds. "That's 4 minutes until every vendor here either gets paid, or walks out." The murmurs grew louder now, the kind of noise that sounds like 1,000 secrets trading places. Olivia rose from her chair, pale and trembling. "Daddy, please." I held up a hand. No, honey. You've had your microphone long enough. Laughter bubbled nervously from the crowd, the way people laugh when they aren't sure if something's real. I gestured toward Lauren Keating, who stood by the catering doors with two of her assistants, tablets in hand. Lauren, could you confirm the client of record for tonight's event? She swallowed, glanced at her screen, then projected her voice so the room could hear. Yes, sir. Client of record, Rourke Mechanical and Property Services, owner, Jack Rourke. A single flash popped as a photographer caught her expression. Charles turned red. This is absurd. My son's wedding is not some trade negotiation. No, sir, I said. It's a business transaction. One that's about to default on payment. I motioned to Mark D'Angelo, my attorney, who had been sitting quietly 2 tables back. He rose, briefcase in hand, and joined me at the microphone. Mr. Rourke asked me to bring documentation, he said calmly, opening the case. For transparency. He handed me a neat folder. I pulled out the first page and held it high. This is the venue contract, I said. Bellevue Grand Hotel, Event Space A, rental cost, $179,500. Signed by Jack Rourke, authorized purchaser. I turned a few pages. Catering, Harbor and Hearth, $112,000. Another page. Florals, Merriweather, $31,500. Lighting and AV, Blueprint Systems, $27,000. Total, $350,000 pending final authorization. The pages made a crisp sound in the microphone as I flipped them. It was louder than any shout. I looked up. Every contract lists me, not the Aldrich family, not Harrison Cole, as the responsible party. Someone gasped. Someone else whispered. He's got receipts. I set the papers on the podium. You see, when you run a business long enough, you learn the importance of proof. Everything I build stands because it's supported. Same goes for family. Support means nothing if the structure above it denies the foundation exists. Olivia's voice cracked. Please stop. You're humiliating me. No, Liv. You did that the second you erased me. A hush rolled through the guests. I didn't shout. I didn't have to. My voice carried because it was steady. I turned to Harrison Cole, who had remained seated, eyes darting for an exit. Mr. Cole, I'm curious. How exactly did you earn the title of father tonight? A donation? A family favor? He stammered. Olivia's mother was a friend. She's been gone 12 years. I interrupted softly. You met my daughter at a gallery opening last spring. You posed for a photograph, and suddenly she decided you fit better in the story she wanted to tell. A few people gasped. Harrison sank into his chair. I glanced toward Charles Aldrich Sr. You toasted integrity and good breeding. Let's test that integrity. Did your family pay a single dollar toward this event? He didn't answer. The silence did it for him. My phone buzzed again. 2 minutes and 8 seconds. I held it up. 2 minutes left. The color drained from Olivia's face. Daddy, don't do this. Please. I'm not doing anything, I said. I'm just deciding whether to finish what I started. Respect isn't free, Liv. It's billed in installments you pay through your actions. Lauren Keating stepped forward slightly, voice measured. Sir, for clarity, if payment isn't authorized by 9, our service agreement allows suspension of operations. That's correct, I said. Standard industry practice. You don't serve a party that won't pay its bill. The guests were whispering now, phones filming openly. Tessa Quinlan typed furiously on hers, already drafting the headline. Olivia's groom, Bennett, finally stood. Mr. Rourke, this is ridiculous. You're making a scene. You think anyone here will do business with you after this? I smiled faintly. Son, the people who do business with me don't mind a man standing by his contracts. They mind people who break them. He sneered. You're ruining your daughter's wedding. No, I said quietly. I'm saving her from thinking lies build lasting structures. The timer ticked down, 47 seconds. I turned back to the microphone. You all came here to celebrate a union built on deception. A daughter ashamed of her roots. A family that mistook money for character. But I didn't come here for revenge. I came here for accountability. The crowd was still. Even the staff froze mid-motion. The faint hum of the chandeliers filled the silence. Olivia, I said, you once asked me why I cared so much about contracts. You said people should trust each other. I told you trust is the only thing worth putting in writing. My phone chimed, 9 p.m. The screen flashed a prompt. Authorize final payment, $350,000/decline. I let it linger long enough for everyone to see. Then I pressed decline. A soft digital chime echoed through the hotel's sound system, followed by a new message on the large projection screen behind the band. Service suspended, account hold. Client, Rourke Mechanical and Property Services. Gasps filled the room. The chandeliers flickered as the lighting automation switched to standby. The band's sound system went dead. Waiters froze mid-aisle, unsure whether to continue serving. Lauren nodded once to her team. Professional, contained. Within seconds, the bar stopped pouring. Kitchen doors shut. The ballroom fell into a silence more powerful than shouting could ever achieve. I set my phone down on the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, looks like the celebration's over, for now. Then I stepped back, leaving the microphone to echo faintly in the stunned quiet. The silence that followed felt physical, like the room itself had stopped breathing. For a few seconds, no one moved. Then the first light flickered out over the dance floor. The chandeliers dimmed automatically, their soft hum replaced by the hollow click of relays disengaging. Someone gasped. Another whispered, "What just happened?" Lauren Keating, calm as a surgeon, stepped forward with her radio. "All stations, we are now on hold. Suspend service, secure assets, and await client confirmation." Across the ballroom, waiters exchanged confused glances, then began collecting trays and glasses. The band members looked at one another helplessly, instruments silent. The enormous projection screen behind them still displayed the blue banner. Service suspended, account hold. Client, Rourke Mechanical and Property Services. It glowed like a confession letter written in light. I didn't move. I just watched the reactions unfold, slow, stunned, like dominoes tipping through silk. Charles Aldridge Sr. was the first to explode. "This is outrageous. You can't just pull the plug on a wedding." "Actually, I can," I said, my voice even. "Contract Clause 4C, services contingent on final authorization from the client of record." He blinked, unsure whether to shout or negotiate. Bennett, the groom, leaned toward Olivia, whispering furiously, "Fix this. Get him to fix this." His face was pale now, no longer smug, just frightened. Olivia turned toward me, trembling. "Daddy, please. You've made your point. Turn it back on." "This isn't about power, Liv," I said. "It's about truth. You lied to everyone here. You introduced another man as your father while I funded every square inch of this room. You buried me alive in my own generosity." Her tears started then, quick and hot. "I was scared," she said. "You don't belong in their world." I took a slow step closer. "Then maybe their world isn't worth belonging to." Murmurs rolled through the crowd. Phones filmed from every angle now, hundreds of screens catching the raw collapse of a dynasty dinner. At the back, Tessa Quinlan murmured to her photographer, "Keep rolling." Charles tried again, voice brittle. "You're destroying your daughter's life over pride." I shook my head. "Pride doesn't sign contracts. Character does." He looked to Lauren, grasping for authority. "Miss Keating, I demand that you restore the power and continue the event. My family will handle payment." Lauren didn't flinch. "I'm sorry, Mr. Aldridge, but until the client of record authorizes release, our policy forbids continuation. Our systems are automated. We'd risk legal breach." Charles's jaw twitched. Then you'll never work in this town again. Lauren smiled faintly. I've worked in hospitality long enough to know integrity outlasts reputation. The room erupted in whispers. Meanwhile, the band's violinist quietly packed her bow. A caterer wheeled away a cart of uneaten hors d'oeuvres. The smell of expensive champagne mingled with panic. I turned to the guests. For anyone wondering what's happening, this is what accountability looks like. I didn't cancel love. I canceled deception. Bennett stormed toward me. You think anyone will admire this? You've humiliated yourself. No, I said softly. I've reminded everyone that working hands built this night. He glared. You'll pay for this. I smiled slightly. Already did. The laughter that followed wasn't kind, it was nervous, fragile, but it broke something open. People began whispering not about scandal, but recognition. The realization that every glittering inch of the ballroom existed because of a man they'd dismissed as a laborer. Olivia's mascara streaked her cheeks. You've ruined me, she said, barely audible. Ruined? I asked. No. Ruined is what happens when the foundation cracks. I just cut the lights so you could see the damage. She covered her face. Lauren's radio crackled. Kitchen confirmed shutdown. Refrigerated goods secured. Security standing by for guest departure. Copy, Lauren replied. The jazz trio stood uncertainly by their instruments. I nodded toward them. Go ahead and pack up, folks. You'll still get paid. One of them, a gray-bearded saxophonist, met my eyes and said quietly, Good for you, sir. The words landed heavier than they should have. In the corner, Harrison Cole had risen halfway from his chair, but now he slunk back down. He'd gone ghost white, his fake dignity melting under the heat of truth. Tessa Quinlan approached cautiously, microphone in hand. Mr. Rourke, is there anything you'd like to say for the record? I thought for a moment. Yeah. Family isn't a costume you put on for photographs. It's the work you do when no one's watching. That line hit like a pulse. Someone in the back started clapping, awkwardly, uncertainly, but it spread. A few, then a dozen, then more. Not applause for spectacle, but for nerve. Charles barked. Stop clapping! This man is an embarrassment. I turned to him. Sir, embarrassment is pretending money equals worth. You've spent a lifetime mistaking net worth for self-worth. Tonight, maybe learn the difference. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Lauren cleared her throat. Mr. Rourke, per our agreement, would you like to terminate the event completely or place it on hold pending resolution? I looked at Olivia. Her gown shimmered in the emergency lighting, ivory fading toward gray. She looked smaller now, fragile. Terminate, I said quietly. And itemize the refund under lesson learned. Lauren nodded once and signaled her team. A faint click echoed through the sound system as the main breaker disengaged. The chandeliers dimmed to security mode. The ballroom descended into a twilight glow, the kind of light that makes people honest. Olivia collapsed into a chair, sobbing. Bennett hovered, but his hands never touched her. He was already thinking about optics. I picked up my phone, scrolled through the portal, and hit Send final statement. A digital receipt pinged back. Cancellation confirmed. Rourke mechanical authorization required for reactivation. The system beeped softly and went still. When I looked up, the ballroom doors were opening. Guests filed out quickly, avoiding eye contact. Some paused to offer me a nod, a quiet word of respect. Others just stared, uncomprehending. Charles Aldrich Sr. lingered long enough to say, You think this will make you look righteous? You'll be blacklisted from every social circle in this state. Then I'll have more time for real friends, I said. He left without replying. At last it was only me, Olivia, and the staff cleaning up around us. I stepped closer to her table. I never wanted this, I said softly. All I ever wanted was for you to remember where you came from. She lifted her face streaked with tears. Why couldn't you just let me have this night? Because some nights cost too much to buy. She said nothing. I turned toward the exit. Behind me, the faint glow of the screen still pulsed in the dark ballroom. Service suspended, account hold. Proof that sometimes justice doesn't shout, it simply stops paying. The next morning, the Bellevue Grand was trending on every social platform east of Chicago. The hashtag the plugged wedding had hit 500,000 views by sunrise. Someone had uploaded the entire confrontation, from my first step toward the microphone to the blue, service suspended screen. The clip racked up comments faster than the hotel's PR team could type responses. By 8 a.m., my phone was vibrating nonstop. Reporters, old customers, even competitors. One message caught my eye. "Good for you, Jack. Finally someone reminded them money doesn't mean manners." Margaret Lee. Outside, gulls circled the marina. Newport's harbor glittered the way it always did, untouched by the chaos a few blocks inland. But the Aldridge name, that wasn't glittering anymore. At 9:17, Tessa Quinlan's article went live in the New England Society Ledger. Ballroom breakdown. Bride's father cuts off $350,000 wedding after being erased from program. It described the evening minute by minute, even quoting my line. "Family isn't a costume you put on for photographs." The public devoured it. Half the readers called me heartless. The other half called me a legend. By noon, TV vans crowded the Bellevue parking lot. The hotel issued a brief statement. "All operations proceeded according to contractual terms. We uphold every client's right to enforce agreements." That single line shifted the narrative. What had looked like revenge now looked like a man protecting his rights. While the world digested headlines, the Aldridge family was imploding. Charles Aldridge Sr. called me at 2 that afternoon. I didn't answer the first 3 times. When I finally picked up, his voice sounded thin, controlled but cracking. "Mr. Rourke, we need to talk about damages." "Damages?" I said. "I didn't break anything. You destroyed my son's wedding. There are reputational consequences, legal implications." "Consequences," I interrupted, "are what happen when you ignore contracts. You signed nothing, paid nothing, and claimed everything. That's fraud in my world." He started to protest, but I ended the call. By evening, Bennett's tone had changed too. A statement from his publicist reached me by email. "Mr. Aldridge deeply regrets the misunderstanding and respects Mr. Rourke's commitment to transparency." It was the kind of apology that apologizes without meaning it. At my office, the phones kept ringing. But not with hate. With offers. A construction developer from Providence left a voicemail. "Jack, saw what you did. I like a man who stands by his contracts. You free next week? I've got a management bid you'll want." By day's end, we had 3 new commercial clients. The irony wasn't lost on me. The event that was supposed to humiliate me had become the best marketing campaign of my life. My crew treated me like I'd come back from war. They watched the clip during lunch break, laughing at the part where the screen flashed blue. "Boss," one said, "you just proved plumbers run the world." That same night, I received a different kind of call. Olivia. Her voice was hoarse. "Dad, can we meet?" "Where are you?" "At the hotel." "You shouldn't still be there." "I know. But I don't have anywhere else." I hesitated. "I'll be there in 15. When I arrived, the ballroom was dark except for cleaning lights. The scent of wilted orchids clung to the air. She was sitting at the same table where she'd cried the night before, wedding gown replaced by jeans and a borrowed hoodie. She looked up as I approached. "They're all gone," she said. "Bennett, his parents, even Harrison." He said I embarrassed him. "You embarrass yourself," I said gently. "I know." Her voice cracked. "But you humiliated me too. I taught you." She stared at me, not understanding. "I taught you what happens when you build anything on lies," I said. "Whether it's a foundation or a relationship." She covered her face with her hands. "I wanted them to like me. To belong somewhere better." I sighed and pulled out a chair. "Better isn't about chandeliers and champagne. It's about who still answers when you've got nothing left." Her shoulders trembled. I guess that's you. It always was. For a long time we sat there in the dim glow of the security lights. I remembered every scraped knee, every school recital, every night I'd stayed awake fixing pipes so she'd have tuition money. Somewhere between invoices and grown-up pride, we'd lost each other. But the silence between us now felt less like distance, and more like ground being rebuilt. Before leaving, I handed her a folded envelope. "Your mother's bracelet," I said. "She'd want you to have it now, not because you deserve it, but because she'd want you to remember who you are." Olivia took it wordlessly. When I walked away, she whispered, "Thank you." The following week brought a flood of follow-ups. Catering vendors demanded the Aldridges cover the unpaid invoices. The family's accountants tried to shift liability but failed. Every contract bore my company seal, and all service stoppage was legally executed. The hotel's counsel confirmed full compliance. In short, the Aldridges couldn't sue anyone without suing themselves. Social invitations evaporated. Their charity gala was postponed indefinitely. The Newport set, smelling blood, moved on to newer gossip. In their world, scandal ages faster than champagne. Meanwhile, Rourke Mechanical got 3 newspaper profiles in a week. Local business owner holds firm to principles. They ran my photo, the same tux from the wedding, but this time my name sat under it. Late one evening, Lauren Keating stopped by my office. She handed me a manila envelope. Inside was a check from the Bellevue Grand. "Refund for unused service hours," she said. "Company policy." I tried to hand it back. "You earned it." She smiled. "So did you. You reminded my staff why we have signatures in the first place." Before she left, she added quietly, "For what it's worth, I think you saved your daughter. It'll take time, but she'll see." 2 weeks later, I opened the mail and found a handwritten note. No return address, just my name in looping script. "Dad, I'm starting to understand. The world I wanted doesn't build anything real. I've been talking to a counselor, looking for work. Maybe one day I can earn back your respect. Love, Liv." I read it twice, then placed it on the corner of my desk, beside a photo of her at age 8 holding a wrench almost as big as her arm. That night, for the first time in months, I slept 8 full hours. The Aldridge name still floats around Newport, but quieter now, like a yacht without wind. People whisper that Charles sold off 2 properties. Bennett moved to Boston, focusing on his portfolio. Harrison Cole resurfaced in New York, avoiding interviews. As for me, I'm busier than ever. But sometimes, in the middle of paperwork, I catch myself glancing at my phone expecting another countdown. Not because I miss the drama, because I miss the clarity. There's a strange peace in drawing a line and finally keeping it. At closing time, I step outside the shop. The harbor lights shimmer like gold threads on dark water. My crew's laughter drifts from the garage. I think about Liv somewhere out there, maybe working a new job, maybe still figuring it out. She'll get there. I raised her to fix leaks. She can fix this too. And if she ever needs me again, she knows exactly which number authorizes the payment. 6 weeks later, the world had moved on, but the echo of that night still followed us. The viral clip had cycled through every talk show and reaction channel imaginable. Commentators debated whether I was a hero or a heartless parent, but none of them knew the truth. They hadn't seen my hands split open from 30 years of work, or my daughter's tears the night she learned what shame really costs. Public interest faded like headlines always do, but its impact didn't. The Aldridges vanished from Newport's social calendar. Their properties were under restructuring. Their charity invitations postponed. In truth, they were radioactive. No one wanted to sit next to the family who got outbid by integrity. Meanwhile, Rourke Mechanical was thriving. The kind of thriving that doesn't come from luck, it comes from respect. Developers who never returned my calls were now asking for meetings. Banks wanted my company on their vendor lists. One magazine ran a profile titled, "The Working Class Man Who Unplugged High Society." Funny thing about reputation, it grows best after you stop trying to impress people. Still, the only call I was waiting for hadn't come. Until it did. It was a gray Monday morning when Olivia showed up at my office. No appointment. No entourage. Just her. She stood in the doorway holding a cup of diner coffee and a manila folder. Her eyes looked older, quieter. "Can I come in?" she asked. I nodded toward the chair across from my desk, the same one where she used to do homework while I filled out invoices. "I found a job," she said, setting the folder down. "Entry level, at a local property management company. They needed someone who knows customer relations and scheduling." I smiled faintly. "That's honest work." She hesitated. "Actually, they offered me 2 options, there or here." She slid a folded application across the desk. My company's logo sat at the top. "If you'll have me," she added. For a long moment, I just looked at it. The last time we'd stood face to face, she'd been wearing a gown worth more than my first house. Now she was asking for a job that paid barely more than my first paycheck. "Why here?" I asked. "Because I want to learn what I took for granted. I don't want charity. I want work." There was no trembling in her voice this time. Just determination, the kind that can't be faked. "You'll start at 38,000, I said. "Entry level. Office hours, field calls, manage appointments. No shortcuts, no last names for favors." She nodded. "Understood. And you'll report to Margot in residential services. She's tough." "I can handle tough." "I know." For the first time in a long time, she smiled, small, unguarded, real. Her first week wasn't easy. My crew didn't treat her like a princess, and that's exactly what she needed. They sent her out on site runs, made her carry paperwork, handle irate tenants, and file invoices that smelled faintly of solder and dust. At lunch, she sat with the team, listening more than talking. She stopped wearing designer clothes and started showing up in work boots. I didn't hover, but I watched. The first Friday, I passed her desk and saw her typing estimates into our software. She was focused, hair tied back, a pencil tucked behind her ear, the same way her mother used to work. When she looked up and saw me, she grinned. "See?" she said. "Still standing." I nodded. "That's the first step." A month later, I called her into my office. "You've been doing good work," I said. "The crew respects you. Mostly because I bring donuts," she teased. "Bribes don't count. Consistency does." She laughed softly, then turned serious. "I've been saving my checks. I'm paying off the hotel balance. The Part 10." I started to object, but she held up a hand. "No, Dad. I need to do this. I need to close the account that humiliated you." I leaned back in my chair. The woman sitting across from me wasn't the same one who had stood beneath chandeliers pretending not to know me. She was humbler now, but stronger too, like tempered steel. "Then I'll match every dollar you pay," I said. "Not because you owe me. Because we'd build things together again." She smiled, eyes wet but steady. "Deal." Words spread quietly around Newport. Not about the wedding, that gossip had gone stale, but about the girl who'd left the high society circle to work in her father's company. People noticed. One day, Lauren Keating stopped by with a stack of event maintenance contracts. "For next season," she said, "we'd rather hire the company that honors its name." As she turned to leave, she added, "Your daughter's good. She'll make you proud." "She already has," I said. On a late Friday evening, the office was empty except for us. Olivia finished entering the last invoice and looked up. "You know, I used to think forgiveness was something you gave once and that was it." "It's not," I said. "It's something you earn every day you show up." She nodded thoughtfully. "Then I'll keep earning it." I smiled. "Good. Just remember, keep backups. And always read the fine print." She laughed, shaking her head. "That's your version of I love you, isn't it?" "Pretty much." Months later, I stood outside the shop one morning, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise spill across the harbor. The trucks were already rumbling to life, the crew trading jokes in the parking lot. Olivia pulled up in her small used hatchback, waving as she passed. She looked happy. Not glamorous, not polished, happy. I thought back to that night at the Bellevue Grand, the applause, the blue screen, the silence that followed. It had felt like destruction then. Now I understood it was demolition before rebuilding. You can't lay new foundation until you tear down the old one. That's what forgiveness really is, construction work. Every day, brick by brick, earning trust, rebuilding walls you knocked down. And when you finally step back, the thing you rebuilt might not look like the home you lost, but it stands stronger. As she locked the office door that evening, she turned to me. Hey, Dad? Yeah? Thanks for not giving up on me. I smiled. That was never in the contract. If you've stayed with me this long, tell me where you're watching from. Have you ever had to choose between pride and forgiveness, between what's easy and what's right? Leave a comment below, and if you believe in real stories about everyday justice, hit subscribe and ring that bell. Because sometimes the loudest revenge is quiet redemption.